Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. We have part two of this special series with Old Glory Bank, which, as you know, I am a founding member and happy to represent. And so we have one of the other halves of the brain trust of the leadership, Mr. Eric Ohlhausen, who is the co-founder and chief strategy officer of Old Glory Bank, and we'll be discussing his bio momentarily. If you're new to the podcast, please do like, subscribe, and share so that others can gain in the knowledge you've been afforded. As you know, Eric is one of the co-founders, and he began his career in the banking industry 35 years ago as a commercial lender for Bank of America. For a period of 15 years, he served as a co-founder, CFO, or senior executive of several fintech payment companies, to include Brightwell, Greenwood Financial, and Greenlight. Eric has led business development throughout North America, Europe, and Asia. He's earned a BA in economics from the University of Virginia, as well as an MBA from UK's Manchester Business School, which included studying at the International University of Japan. Eric and his wife of over 30 years live in Atlanta and have two grown children, and we will leave his information afterwards in the description. Eric, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing fantastic. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks for your time. Now, before we get started on all the usual dialogue questions like we did with Ringer, as we affectionately call him, I have to give acknowledgement to the very generous benefacting of Old Glory. You gave me some pens, the hat, the shirt that I'm wearing, which is very comfortable, by the way, and I love the patriotic colors. Also, I needed a new mouse pad, so that was very
apropos. Oh my gosh.
Well, also to include two great books that I'm in the process of finishing. One, Dr. Ben Carson, one of the board members, Perilous Fight. And of course, Larry Elder, As Goes California, which is apropos since I'm currently here, and a coffee mug, which I didn't have time to bring out. So you guys were very generous in the blessing, which I greatly appreciate.
Wow, looks like a Ringer raided the storage room, and I can't think of anything he didn't grab for you, other than maybe there's a dog. We have a dog bandana. If you happen to have a pet in your life, we can arrange that as well.
I'll hit you up when I move to Tennessee for that, because I do want to get a golden retriever. So I appreciate that, but wanted to give Old Glory a shameless plug for all the generosity. So thank you to you and to Mike for facilitating that. So Eric, as you know, when we met with Mike last month, we talked about the foundation of Old Glory. What's interesting to start the conversation today is, as you mentioned off camera, is that you were sort of the impetus to kind of give Mike a friendly nudge to start the bank. Can you talk a little bit about how you came up with the idea to start this? And folks, for over a year now, we've been extolling the virtues of buying precious metals. As you can see, Fort Knox is about to be audited, and that's imminent. And you're going to see that gold reserves are little to none. What do you think that'll do to the price of gold? And with silver being ransacked with COMEX on the markets, that's sure to follow as well. The only question is, are you going to take action or not? If you haven't, what are you waiting for? And if you have, please take a moment to visit one of our great sponsors here below, the link in the description, and call for the information. It's free. The consultation is free. The cost of not taking advantage of this has lasting consequences, folks. Please tell them John and Chris sent you. You'll be more than happy that you did. Calling Mike, kind of what was the process that started this, please?
Sure, happy to. And as I think Mike had shared, we longtime acquaintances. He's a formerly practicing attorney, and I'm a former client of his, going back probably 20 years ago. And he did securities work. I'd been with younger fintech businesses, and so we had crossed paths years ago. Always kept in touch throughout the years. Didn't see each other too regularly, but he was always someone that I thought highly of. And when something like the idea of a pro-America bank that could serve all Americans regardless of their views, he is someone that I thought of right away to reach out and float this idea to. What led to it, and this goes back to the fall of 2020, as you mentioned in the bit of bio about me, I do come from the financial services as well as financial technology industries. I started out right out of college as a commercial lender at a big bank, what's now B of A. Learned to lend money to small businesses, was really inspired to see how all sorts of businesses come to being. And typically, as I noticed, it was people who hadn't gone through the more credentialed paths of kind of secondary education and that was very eye-opening, just to build a complete respect for people who had the gumption to go out and start whatever business in whatever industry they happen to, be it plumbing, carpet installation. I mean, you name it. Really inspirational to have seen individuals forming businesses and going at risk to create jobs for other people. I went a more traditional path as a commercial lender. I then got into more M&A, kind of investment banking, kind of in-house corporate development for a number of financial technology businesses. And through that process, certainly always had that entrepreneurial mindset that I had acquired by having banked entrepreneurs. But through that process of being in financial technology, I observed what really is sometimes it's with online banking. Sometimes there's this expression that I love to share, and that's that in the older days, people used to choose the bank that was closer to their home, but with online banking, people now can choose the bank that's closest to their identity or closest to their heart or their values. And technology, online banking, is what opens that up. Banks are no longer limited to just the locality of their geographic footprint of a branch or two or many branches as they grow. And it was having observed the carving up of what I'd call the more liberal oriented sectors. Lot of it's kind of naturally how things start to be identified as opportunities. There was still is an online solution called Aspiration, which caters to the environmentally conscious crowd. There's Greenwood, you mentioned, where I had been acting CFO for over a year, and they cater to the African American and Hispanic audience. There's Green Light, which serves families with teens. There's LGBTQ oriented solution called Daylight. And so I observed firsthand and just seen in the industry, being in the industry, this carving up and catering to various constituencies. But there was this huge glaring gap, perhaps something similar to what Fox News identified 30 or 35 years ago whenever they formed, was that in my eyes, looking at from my perspective in banking and financial services, it was what I felt half the country not being spoken to by the large banks. The cancel culture was getting more and more into the financial system. The DEI and ESG was driving a lot of banks' decisions. And what really prompted this idea in my mind to actually act on it was coming out of the summer of 2020. Of course, you'll recall all the craziness and the riots. There was the kneeling for the national anthem, and I always felt it's not a Republican versus Democrat thing there. I've always felt there are plenty of Democrat veterans who take offense to people kneeling for the flag and the anthem. People have, believe in gun rights and the Second Amendment, and didn't like seeing big banks and financial services tools like PayPal canceling and excluding completely lawful transactions with firearms and ammunition, and not just lawful, but constitutionally protected lawful activity. Having seen that, that's what prompted me to say, you know what, we need a bank that stands up for the flag, that pushes back on the vilification of vilifying police for doing their hard work and the military for putting their lives on the line and disrespecting them. All of that. I felt there needs to be a bank that's out there that proudly believes in the greatness of our country, that supports those who are our first responders, our military, and as important, will ensure that all can participate in the financial system of America. And it's really what drove this concept. And when I started talking because I've called Ringer, I said, this is what we need to do. And about a month later, we had some follow-up conversations, and I'll tell some of the things that prompted that as well to kind of really energize us. But there was this belief and this strong feeling that people should have the right to participate. And it's really similar in this financial system. It's very analogous to free speech and being against censorship. And we did not want to, we felt it wouldn't be principled to just say, oh, let's be the conservative bank because conservatives are being canceled. We'll kind of do to the others, what they do to us. You could have taken that path, but it's not a very principled one. And if you believe in free speech, you believe in, you'll support the right of others to say things that you don't agree with. And that's the whole reason for First Amendment is otherwise you wouldn't need it, but it's to protect the unpopular views. And similarly in banking, we felt so long as you're lawfully operating, you should have the right to bank at Old Glory Bank. We're going to be that safe haven, regardless of your beliefs, your views, the industry you operate in. And so naturally that skews right. I would say, the folks who those principles speak to the most tend to be on the right. But I mean, we have customers and employees clear across the political spectrum because they see this as a safe haven and protected environment to participate in financial services, again, so long as you're lawfully operating.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one of the drivers for me to come over to Old Glory, as you said, as a safe haven away from the tier ones or the majors, whatever you want to call it. One of the thoughts when I was thinking about when I was putting questions together for you, Eric, was to kind of complement against what we asked Mike to variegate it up, is you in your background you have an interesting seamless blend between the traditional and the technological, as you discussed, and the bio briefly lays that out. So we have a lot of people who blended groups of audiences. Some are more seasoned, where they're used to going to their local bank or what have you and dealing with people. What I have found it's interesting about Old Glory, amongst the ideological perspective, to your point, is the fact that you seem to have bridged the gap between technology and the personal touch. Like I deal with Angie and Jennifer in operations. They've taken expert care
Oh,
of
they're
me over the years.
fantastic.
They're
That's
fantastic
great.
women and people, and yet you feel like you're talking to a local banker, even though they're several thousand miles away. Um, how, in your estimation, do you bridge that gap for maybe a more advanced or an older audience that's accustomed to going down to their branch and still giving them the level of service that they were accustomed?
Yeah, great question, and it is something we are very proud of having built, was this combination of several key, you call them the legs of the stool that make Old Glory Bank so appealing. First is the mission and the appeal of the branding of what we stand for. Clearly, that's a differentiator, but we never wanted to be just waving the flag and rest on just that. I mean, it's important to have those positions and support America in that way. But we always felt people might come to us for those reasons, but they're only going to stay if we have excellent financial services and excellent customer support. And so those being the other two legs of the stool. So certainly the branding and the mission was important, and that's what started things. But what we have been able to do, because we have a national scale, so we bought this. We're actually now a 122-year-old bank. 2 years ago, with this idea, rather than start a new bank, what's called a de novo, we purchased a bank in Oklahoma, a proud bank called First State Bank of Elmore City in Oklahoma. It's a small town in south of Oklahoma City. We bought that bank. Normally, a bank of its size, as I mentioned earlier, is going to have just their geographic location that's their target market. They're not they're only built to serve people face to face, maybe a little bit of rudimentary online banking. But your typical community bank, whether it's one branch, 10 branches, 20 branches, doesn't really have the scale to invest in the technology, and I mean really robust technology. And in a second, I'll describe some of that with Old Glory Bank. It's what you experience because you have it on your phone, but your listeners and viewers would not necessarily. But we've been able, because we have a national digital footprint, because with Old Glory Bank, when we bought the bank, renamed it Old Glory Bank, we layered a digital bank, so to speak, on top of this one branch location bank. And now we have customers every state of the union, individuals and businesses. We went from just hundreds of accounts to over 50,000, now over 55,000 customers clear across the country. Just in about a year and a half time, we reached that level, because we now have the ability to open accounts clear across the country because of the technology that we put in place. And with that national scale, we were able to cost justify investing in a level of technology that your typical bank our size cannot do. And we've grown because of that. Mirroring or alongside that desire to have great technology to support our growth, we always recognized that you need to have good customer service, because there are trade-offs. If someone is used to walking into their branch down the street, they're used to that strong touch, that high touch experience. Technology goes a long way to cover what you would do in a branch, but there quite often is the need, and as you mentioned, with the different demographics and ages that we cater to, having a full service online as well as phone-based customer support has served our audience very well, our customers very well. And we even have deliberately set up call center in Oklahoma. It's all onshore, avoids a lot of the frustrations people have when they're communicating with offshore call centers that can be frustrating, and we recognize that, especially for an older audience. And so we do feel we've brought together the technology typically only found by a mega bank like a Citi or a B of A or a Chase. We have that level of technology with the high touch experience of a community bank. And then thirdly, we have a mission-oriented appeal that people feel they're banking with the bank now at Old Glory Bank that doesn't hate them, that doesn't vilify them for taking the positions they have or feel that have the beliefs that they hold. And it's something quite pleasantly has been, or we're quite pleased to see that it has resonated in the marketplace, and we have customers clear across the country, and the level of growth is just something a bank ordinarily does not experience, but we've really turbocharged the ability to grow a bank and deliver something unique.
Yeah, I agree. And thank you for that explanation, Eric. Much appreciated. Now, swinging in the other direction to technology, because it's denoted from your resume that or your bio, that you have a robust touch point, we'll say, with technology. One of the things I talked about with Mike, as you probably remember on our last podcast, was the ability to blend kind of the old with the new. So going to the new side of it, he had talked a lot about you still have to share with the with the banking industry, FDIC, and those agencies, a level of reporting for compliance purposes. But what he was touching on, I wanted to have you articulate a bit, is there's sort of a closed loop technology there that protects the client's interests without divulging more information than is necessary. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Sure. A couple things on that topic. First of all, with the technology, when I say we have really good technology, the online banking experience and the mobile banking experience is, I think, untouched. And I've banked with large banks in the country. And by that, what I mean is Old Glory Bank app really is a financial app of apps. It allows our customers to still view, maybe they have an Amex card that they've had for years, or a Capital One card, or a bank account they got out of college and that became their primary account. Whatever the case may be, we recognize people and encourage people to have, you want to have multiple solutions. We think over time, people move more and more of their banking to Old Glory Bank, but it's natural people have a number of relationships. What's so good about our app is that individuals, our customers, no longer have to open up 4 or 5 apps to see remind themselves where they spent their money for dinner last Friday night, let's say, and you're trying to hunt down a transaction. Where was that? Which card did I use? Did I get charged right, correctly, and so forth. All of that is within the Old Glory Bank app. You can open up those other accounts and see the transactions. You can even have a view that blends all of your transactions across, let's say, 5 different accounts, one after the other, just sequentially, and it'll just note where it was. So I have really good access to viewing your finances. We have some great tools for consumers, things like charitable roundups, where our audience, our customer, is a very giving audience. I mean, they just are natural givers. Might be because of their faith-based, and that tithing is part of their mindset. Just in general, conservatives tend to be very giving people, and so we've built in some automatic capabilities where you can selectively, or you can elect on your own. It's purely optional. To excuse me, to opt into rounding up to. Right now, we have several veterans-oriented charities. We'll be adding some more over time, and just have a host of options that people can do there. Even churches over time, we envision being able to have churches encourage their members to open an account at Old Glory Bank, and then build in some automatic roundup giving to that church. And so some great vehicles there. Goal setting. A lot of our customers, and we serve middle America. It's very useful to be able to bucketize your savings with goals and say, all right, I want to put aside $2,500 over time for a down payment for an automobile, let's say, or Christmas fund. January, February, March, I want to already start squirreling away, $50 a month, whatever it might be. And we can build in these automatic transfers. The funds are still yours. They're always available in this savings, segmented savings account that's tied to the account, your primary account. But it's just some very useful capabilities and tools. You mentioned the closed loop payments, and one of the drivers of our formation of Old Glory Bank was not just the sense of a need for a pro-America bank, but it was also the need for a bank that would protect the confidentiality of its customers and their private transactions. Now, we are a law-abiding bank. We believe in the Constitution, and we feel part and parcel with that, of course, as a regulated entity. We certainly will honor if we're served with a subpoena, a lawful subpoena. Yes, we're going to honor that and fulfill that if there are transactions of an individual who's under a lawful subpoena. Yes, we'll cooperate there. But what so many of the big banks have done and were doing, and likely still are doing, is voluntarily sharing the transaction data of their customers, and sharing that with FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, and the FBI. And this is not just loose talk, or saw an article on this. This was actual testimony in congressional hearing that Jim Jordan led last year in 2024. And when I mentioned that there were some other things that really drove Mike Ring and I, who's our CEO, to form Old Glory Bank and rally a bunch of other great patriots around us, was first that initial idea of a pro-America bank that won't cancel its customers, but then secondarily, in January of 2021, the reports were coming out of when the FBI was trying to figure out who was in DC that first week of January. B of A initially, and then, as was reported, most other of the large banks were voluntarily searching their databases and sharing with FinCEN, which is part of the Treasury Department of the Treasury Department, or a division of the Treasury Department, and the FBI, sharing them just massive data dumps of, here are individuals who purchased a firearm, let's say, using a B of A card in the past year, and therefore might be a domestic terrorist. I mean, just crazy abandonment of the traditional protections an individual should have. I mean, it was analogous to, you know, the FBI being allowed to come into my cabinet right next to me, my file cabinet, and looking at my bank statements with zero supposition of or probable cause of any wrongdoing, but just because. And the databases were the big banks like KeyBank and Chase and Citi and B of A, PNC were searching their transactions for who went to Bass Pro or Cabela's, and therefore might have bought a firearm, therefore might be a domestic terrorist. And so those things just made us bristle and gave us one more reason to do the hard work of forming a bank, essentially repositioning an existing bank. We always felt that to truly honor this commitment to our customers of not canceling them and of protecting their data, we had to have the autonomy of actually being a bank. I do come out of the financial technology space, and a lot of businesses, some of the ones I mentioned, in fact, all of the ones I mentioned earlier that were catering to different subsets of the market, they are not actual banks. They're financial technology businesses. They have great front end, great marketing, great online banking tools, but they're not banks. They work with third-party issuing banks that are behind the scenes. We could have done that. But if we were, we never would have. It's a false promise to your customers that you're not going to cancel them if the ultimate decision isn't yours. If, you know, there's a bank behind the scenes that can cancel them, so that's a hollow promise. And so we formed Old Glory Bank and then started adding to the technology tools to deliver more and more autonomy and protections to our customers. We talk about privacy, security, and liberty. We don't stand for DEI. We stand for PSL, privacy, security, and liberty. And so what you are touching on is a product that we developed. It's a proprietary standalone app called Old Glory Pay. And it is what's referred to as a closed loop payment system. So by that, I mean, it's customer of Old Glory Bank to customer of Old Glory Bank. It's great for peer-to-peer transfers. So the way maybe a lot of family members and households and friends swap money using Venmo or PayPal, let's say, Old Glory Pay is a way to do that. Now it's customer to customer, but it's so easy to open up a Old Glory Bank account. Takes 8 minutes of your phone, or just go to oldglorybank.com and you can do that. It's no bigger lift than opening a PayPal account, let's say, and linking to an existing bank account. So in that regard, those payments are closed loop. So there's no MasterCard that's looking or Visa that is seeing those transactions. There's not another bank seeing those transactions, only Old Glory Bank. And we are founded completely on the principle of protecting our customers' data. So there's that comfort. And on the commercial side, the merchant side, we have now over 2,500 businesses that have come on as customers of Old Glory Bank. And you can even, just one visual, I'm not sure if it shows very well, but just a little QR code that if it's a firearm merchant, let's say, or outdoor shop, or just any business that believes in the mission of Old Glory Bank, they can accept Old Glory Pay. You know, that merchant, that shop, and we certainly have online solutions as well for online merchants. But even a physical one just needs that QR code, and a customer can scan it and pay through their Old Glory Pay app, and that now has the comfort of, especially, you know, firearms industry is a great example. Those transactions were some of the most blatantly, you know, abused by these big banks, sharing that data and essentially enabling the government to build these shadow databases of firearms owners. And I'm one of them. I mean, you might tell from some of the background, I spent a lot of time out in the outdoors and feeding my family the hard way, deer hunting and duck and dove and quail and you name it. You know, I don't want to be on some shadow list that the government formed by my lawful, constitutionally protected activities somehow being monitored and reported in a way that the government is not allowed to do. So they were leaning on private enterprise to do, very similar to what we saw with the social media businesses, with Facebook and the previous Twitter iteration of censoring, of shutting down speech that the government didn't want. And the government themselves couldn't contain, so they leaned on private enterprise to do their dirty work. Well, the same has been happening in financial services, and so just another reason why Old Glory Bank stands out in very tangible ways from the rest of the market. And we certainly encourage other organizations who maybe share our view, other financial services even that are, proudly American. And there are a lot of banks that, their management team think the same way we do, but we actually deliver tangible benefits and tangible solutions in a way that goes far beyond the branding, just the branding. Another example just on that topic of actually walking the talk and not just gabbing about it, we have a product called Old Glory Protect. And this is a free offering to any customer of Old Glory Bank who is a member of the military or first responders. So all branches of the military, including reservists and guard, all aspects of first responders, from police and firefighters, including volunteer firefighters, Border Patrol, you name it. If you are in one of those categories and you bank at Old Glory Bank and do just a minimum of direct deposit, actually use us as your bank for free, you get a $100,000 line of duty death benefit. And God forbid, should one of those individuals, one of those customers of ours, pay the ultimate sacrifice and lose their life in the line of duty, we, Old Glory Bank, along the way have been paying the premium for a policy that would pay out to their selected beneficiary. It hasn't happened yet, thank God, but we always say, my partner Mike Ring and John Rich, who's one of our co-founders, will show up at the door of that customer and very solemnly present that check to the family members. And so just another example of not just kind of talking about it, but actually delivering in a tangible, meaningful way to deliver on what we truly believe in and feel is important in life.
Wow. I mean, that's in a good way. You said a mouthful, Eric, and so much of what you said resonates with me. And I'm sure a great constituents of our audience, a majority of them. And so, just for you to be aware, I don't know if you know, but one of the big factors for me, amongst the many that you already articulated beautifully, was the ability. I changed my status a couple of years ago from the Maritime Corporation of America to going, because I know we're going back to a constitutional republic. And so I took steps to remediate that with some alacrity, if you will. And as a result, I was able to use my unique passport and EIN as opposed to the license and the traditional Social Security that the mainstream banks like to try to rope you in. So Old Glory is one of the few banks that would honor that for my circumstances, and I'm sure many others as well. So that was a unique differentiator that brought me over to this side, and it has me so enthusiastic about Old Glory and your efforts. So just a personal testimony for you. The next question I have is, I got this a lot after talking with Mike in our last podcast. So we had a lot of enthusiastic response, and rightly so. Is, John, is this a great bank for us to work with in a different aspect? And that would be, as you may, or I don't know, you may or may not be aware, because I haven't talked about this with you offline, but the world is changing dramatically, as you can see. And President Trump and God have quite a bit to do with that, thankfully. And of course, the American people standing up collectively. But that result is, I mentioned, we're going back to a constitutional republic, which we should have never left in the first place, but we know the situation there. As we're traversing back to that, it's going to affect the economic landscape dramatically throughout the world and in America. As we go back to a gold standard, removing the private Western central bank, creating more autonomy for the people, we're going through a global currency reset. And cryptocurrencies and precious metals and bonds and a whole host of other things my audience is well acquainted. And I had talked about this with Mike, and correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that you're in the infancy stages, or maybe you're even further along. You can talk about that, about bringing on, and this is the question I got, is would Old Glory be a great place to store your newfound wealth in these aforementioned areas? Does Old Glory Bank have a plan for wealth managers, private bankers? And Mike was indicating that there's talks in the works about that. So could you kindly articulate about where you're on that process and how long you anticipate it will take?
Sure. No, great topics, and we pride ourselves in never sitting still. We are very proud of what we have built in just a couple of years now of being in operation in terms of delivering this new platform to our customer base clear across the country, every state of the union, and we do not rest on anything. We are always looking on to how we can deliver yet more value to our customers in a meaningful way. I would say we are very conscious, though, of meeting the market where it is, because I think a lot of businesses, and not just in financial services, can get too far down the road and deliver something that maybe the market isn't there to justify doing it. Or, I mean, if you're a massive bank, sure, you can take a flyer on certain things and develop things well ahead of that bigger market demand. We have been focused these first couple years now, again, of a 122-year-old bank now, but the first couple years as Old Glory Bank, we have been serving middle America with the kinds of tools in the traditional banking system, financial system that most people operate in. And, you know, our customers, they work hard all day, all week long. They get their paycheck. They have their basic transaction needs. They have savings that they want to be responsible with and take care of their family's obligations and future needs. Over time, we have added, because we started out solely catering to individuals with consumer-based accounts. That's kind of the lighter lift and the most appealing, or the broadest appealing. But we quickly were getting individuals who are business owners like you and said, boy, this is great. I love being a customer of Old Glory Bank, but I also have a business. Can I open a business account? And we, sooner than originally anticipated, we notched up and prioritized introducing online business banking, because it's not just there are a lot of heavier requirements than consumer accounts in terms of the controls, just the onboarding. There's a lot more you need to be able to do to do your background and due diligence on the business and ensure, you know, it's properly established and authorized to open the accounts and so forth. So it's a heavier lift process-wise to onboard a customer. But then the delivery itself, in terms of the internal controls, you know, most businesses have the need for several people to view, but, you know, maybe not everyone have the right to actually move money. So there are a lot of controls and just broader requirements. And so we introduced that to serve the needs of businesses, not just consumers. And then as what you're touching on, you know, there are so many more financial service needs of individuals and businesses that go well beyond that. So we introduced home loans, something that consumers were needing, and we have this great installed audience that respects us as a partner, financial partner, and periodically people are going to change homes and need to finance that. So we introduced that. Over time, we do plan to introduce wealth management. Our customers have varying needs there, and there's no reason why we shouldn't. And this is looking more into 2026. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to deliver to our customer base the ability to go to Old Glory Wealth, let's say. That's just my working name for it. We haven't really positioned it, but that category of services for traditional investments in of mutual funds and stocks and bonds and different kinds of money markets and all of that. I mean, that certainly is something that we envision delivering to our customer base. You touched on, I think, though, quite a few other things beyond that in terms of alternative currencies, digital currencies, gold, and so forth. Those are things that and categories that we do see a role for us to serve. Again, we've kind of been walking and then jogging, and I think some of those things you might put more in the sprint of you kind of ramp up to over time. But it's every month we do more and more in that direction. Ringer might have touched a little bit on how we have always been comfortable serving the crypto market. There was something it's referred to as choke point 2.0. There was initially during the Obama administration choke point 1.0, which was the government's efforts to put pressure on financial institutions to shun certain industries. Firearms was one of them. Some of the check cashing solutions that so much of America was relying on, but big banks were being pressured to turn off the bank accounts and ask their firearms merchants, let's say, and firearms manufacturers to find another place to bank. That was choke point 1.0. Choke point 2.0, which came about more in the Biden administration, was beating up on the crypto market. And we were always comfortable, and because our CEO, my partner Mike Ring, is a attorney and very good at getting down to the basic level, the base level of what we truly can and can't do, and what is just guidance as opposed to obligations. And we have, from really the past, I'd say 12 months, have embraced businesses that bank at Old Glory Bank that are in the crypto space and need a bank, just an on-ramp and off-ramp for fiat currency, for USD, with some of these customers of ours. That pretty basic solution that most of the large banks were not prepared to serve and to satisfy. And so that is a market that we are comfortable with, we're amenable to. I think over time, we do envision opening up to where different kind of wallets with partners to hold the digital currencies, and that's part of our game plan and very consistent with the tenets of Old Glory Bank, which is to serve people so long as they're lawfully operating. We're not going to try to pick winners and losers as to who gets to participate in the financial system or in what way they participate in the financial system.
Yeah, and that's important that you said that, Eric, because it would kind of contradict and undermine the entire thesis of why the bank started to begin with. So keeping that wholly intact from end to end becomes critical.
Yeah.
And thanks today in large part to the Trump administration, we have, you mentioned the previous administration, we have Mr. Atkins coming in, I believe Scott Atkins from the new SEC chair has been sworn in today, which is important. We know he's quite crypto friendly, as well as precious metals, and he sees the analogous marriage between the two, which I think will, no pun intended, marry well for the future of Old Glory Bank and any constituents that are involved in it. And so this next question is a little less granular than some of the ones I've asked you, but also equally important, and that is, obviously you spend quite a bit of time, you and Ringer, corporately and separately, thinking about these items, I would imagine, and that is the breadth and depth of the life of Old Glory Bank. You've gotten it off the ground a couple of years ago now, from inception to reality. Where do you see, or what are your goals and aspirations to envision for the bank in the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
Okay. We feel we can be a big national brand. I mean, we already have the national reach, customers in every state, individuals and businesses, but there is no reason why Old Glory Bank, that logo that you're thankfully proudly displaying on your shirt and elsewhere today, that can be a household name. It caters to so large of an audience in America that is has a thirst for an organization that supports their right to think how they think and operate how they operate, so long as they're doing so lawfully. We envision being a standout in that area. And you could say, well, other banks over time, sure, there could be some over time that do form. There aren't many banks being formed though, and it is a incredibly heavy lift to operate in the regulatory environment of being a bank. Rightfully so. There's a lot of regulation. I mean, it's an important, very weighty sector within our economy, and certainly there it needs to be have a lot of the regulations around, but it can be a real impediment for others. And we do feel that we deliver something unique, and will continue to do so. And as we grow, it just compounds the growth of the business, and so many of our customers come through word of mouth, and we certainly do promote the bank through various channels and advertising and social media promotion and so forth. But that being said, so much of our customer base comes from word of mouth and others talking about Old Glory Bank to their friends and family, and that's typically not something that a bank enjoys. People do talk about other things in life. Maybe this beer is great, or this you name it. The golf club is awesome. You should get one yourself. I mean, those sorts of things people talk about. You typically, if you're a B of A customer, you're not saying, "Man, these guys are great. You should really," it's a generic offering. Typically, it's something that, yeah, you open an account years ago, and they don't totally suck, so you stay with them. Let's say, and that's typically what banking has been, and we very deliberately have decommoditized banking. We have made it no longer just a commodity that's a generic either big bank or small bank, and you're just having to decide, do you want to go with the big bank or a small bank? We have a unique offering that marries customer service, great technology, and the mission, the values that appeal to such a large audience that I would say, when you look 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, there is every bit of expectation that we can continue to double, triple as we grow each year, and be a multi-billion, 10 billion. I mean, you name what's the end of the size of what we could be, because we bring together something that a large part of America is thirsty for.
Agreed. And I can attest to that. Personal service, as you know. And also, I've been encouraging our audience through other podcasts with other financial level experts and they've all, as a consensus, would agree, Eric, that it's important for people to be either actively transitioning out of or investigating getting out of the tier one banks and getting into smaller community banks, credit unions, and that's a perfect opportunity, I believe, for people to be examining Old Glory and doing just
Yeah.
that.
I think so. If I could just touch on what you just raised there,
Sure.
we felt, if again, it's very analogous to being pro free speech, and if you're principled about it, you're going to vote with your feet from organizations or periodicals or whatever. If you see censorship happening, you're not going to continue doing business with organizations that censor, let's say, and you're going to vote with your feet and go to other properties for your sources of news, let's say. And very similarly here, if you're at a bank, even if you haven't personally been asked to move, but you're seeing that your bank is shunning certain industries or conservatives in general or religious entities, which has happened so much, then we do feel, and I don't think it's not just self-serving. It's, if you truly are principled and that grates at you, you should do something about it. And why would you continue to support an organization that infringes on the rights of others, whether they're like-minded or not to you, but just infringes on the rights of others to behave and operate and think the way that they would like to, so long as they're not, harming others in the process. And so we do think that making a move it's an easy thing to do. Why would you continue to serve, work with the bank that is treating others so poorly? And there are a lot of examples of debanking and prominent people who have been asked to move, whether it's John Eastman, one of Trump's former attorneys, or Mike Lindell, or the Trumps themselves, both organization as well as individuals in the family. Long list of people who've been asked to move to another financial institution. But I would say, even if a lot of people I'll talk to about this, they'll say, yeah, I'm sure that's happening, but no one's paying attention to, what I'm posting, or, what my views. I'm just a regular person. I'm not going to be debanked. That might be that you're not prominent and noticed, let's say, so much. But that doesn't mean you're not going to be debanked, because entire industries get debanked. And I mentioned firearms. It's such an easy one to talk about. I mentioned I'm a firearms owner, and the fact that I can't use PayPal, now I wouldn't need to because I'm at Old Glory Bank, but PayPal won't process transactions, allow for transactions that are firearms or ammunition oriented, and their terms of use. And I've read this recently. I know this for a fact. In the same paragraph that they prohibit the use of PayPal for firearms and ammunition, in that same paragraph, they say you can't use it for illegal drugs or stolen property. So they lump lawful activity, not just lawful, but constitutionally protected lawful activity, in the same as outright illegal activity. And so as financial tools get limited, the masses are getting debanked when organizations are choosing essentially how people should live their lives. And so again, I think people, a lot of your audience, I'm sure, are passionate about how they about their beliefs and their views, and we're a simple way to actually act on that and support an organization such as Old Glory Bank that espouses all of these great virtues and beliefs and founding principles of America. And that's why, because as we early on were talking about Old Glory Bank, we attracted the attention of some really prominent folks. Larry Elder and Ben Carson are co-founders of ours and actually serve on our board. Two former U.S. presidential candidates on our board. I mentioned John Rich. He's a co-founder, probably the hardest working man in showbiz. He is just always just a true patriot and talking up the values of America, and a great supporter of the bank. Sean Spicer just recently joined our board, former press secretary of Trump in the previous administration. Mary Fallon Christensen, the two-time Republican governor of Oklahoma, she's on our board and is a co-founder. Bill Shine, who was deputy chief of staff in the first Trump administration, after having run Fox News for a number of years. So some great folks who brought credibility to what Old Glory Bank was doing, because they're such well-respected, highly respected individuals, very principled individuals who were truly involved early on building this bank and spreading the good word about it throughout the country. So we couldn't be happier and more pleased by that market reception and having the people around us to help promote it.
It's quite an illustrious team. I've been enjoying the growth of it and the luminaries and the notable people, I should say, that are joining. But hopefully, maybe the Trumps will even open up a bank account because of those aforementioned relationships. We'll have to wait and see. But you also touched on a point, Eric, that I don't think we can gloss over before we finish today. Is you're absolutely right, because some of the residential financial subject matter experts that we interview regularly have their own separate podcasts. And I've noticed they've talked about some of the major tier banks are doing terms of service changes where they can arbitrarily, debank you with really no just cause. You just talked about the hypocrisy of taking constitutionally, lawful uh, the Second Amendment and combining it with nefarious activities that have nothing to do with each other, but they see them as one and the same, which in and of itself is quite disturbing. And then you look at them debanking you for no reason. Now, even like uh, bank justification of how many transactions you do or how much cash you can take out at any given time. I mean, that's, to me, that's just basically north of socialism. So I really think it's critical that people be looking at this time, whether it's Old Glory or someone else, to make these wholesale transitions. So I think it's really important that you touched on that, and then bringing up, of course, the illustrious governance or board of directors, if you like. So Eric, as we close out today on the podcast to make best use of your time, last thoughts that you have for the audience today, and where can people find more about Old Glory?
Great. Well, the simple thing is go to oldglorybank.com. Oldglorybank.com. You can learn a whole lot about us, not just the products, but who's involved. We have a whole collection of videos, of podcast material, of just information about the topics that I've touched on today. You also can learn about becoming an owner of Old Glory Bank. We actually are in the middle of a public offering. It's called a Regulation A offering that any individual or business can invest in Old Glory Bank, and you can learn about it by going to our site. There's a subset or a separate page at own.oldglorybank.com, but you can navigate to it through the main site as well, and learn about becoming an owner, not just a customer of the bank, and just another way to support financial liberty in America with a like-minded entity that is pushing in the direction that so many people would like their financial institution to be pushing, and just defending the people that so many people would want to see defended. And so I guess the closing thought is that it is incredibly easy to open an account. You can do it over your phone. You can do it from your computer at home or at work at oldglorybank.com. It's a very quick, efficient process. It takes 8 minutes, sometimes even quicker for people that just run right through it. It's a pretty light lift. We have free checking accounts. We have savings accounts. We have business accounts, and so a host of opportunities and offerings there that I would encourage people, give us a try. And you don't need to say, all right, I'm going to move everything over, or I'm not ready to move everything over, so that's not the right time for me. Just open an account, put $100 in it, experience what our technology is like. Maybe do a portion of your direct deposit to it. You don't have to do all or nothing to your existing bank. Give us a try, because I think your audience will be very impressed by what we do, and I think they'll feel good about what they're doing, because we are an organization that really takes to heart what we deliver to the market, and we truly live by what we preach, and we feel a standout, unique offering in the marketplace that appeals. The more people find out about us, the more appealing it is, and the more broadly it is. So we thank everyone who is a customer, and we thank those who are considering it to give us a close look and help make this be an even bigger impact on America.
Absolutely. And I'll just compliment what you said real quick, Eric, before we close. Is for myself as a client now for the better part of 2 years, another value add that you can add to the cachet of things you already mentioned is, unlike a lot of the traditional banks that will bombard you with advertisements or emails, you don't get that level of spam with Old Glory. It's a bank that really stands on its own merits. And as you said, it's word of mouth based right now. But even as you grow, I think maintaining that level of touch friendly, hands on, hands off balance, I think becomes paramount. And so far, in my experience, Old Glory has satisfied that quite well, amongst many things. Eric Ohlhausen, co-founder of Old Glory Bank, thank you for being here today. Thank you for your time, attention, expertise, and knowledge. We greatly appreciate it. And we hope you have a blessed rest of your day, and we'll look forward to seeing you again in the near future.
Well, thank you. You as well. Take care.